Lifelong Democrat Diana Florence served for 25 years as a Manhattan prosecutor under DA Robert Morgenthau. She put criminals away and stood up for victims and protected our streets. Now, Diana is challenging failed Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg as an independent because it's time for a DA who fights for our families, not criminals. That's why Diana has won the support of organized labor, like the steam fitters, the plumbers, and ironworkers. Everyday New Yorkers who want a DA they can trust. Manhattan needs a DA who will do the job, prosecute crime. That's Diana Florence. Under Alvin Bragg, crime is up and prosecutions are down. Bragg doesn't prosecute, he plays partisan politics. Bragg failed to protect women and failed to protect workers. As a prosecutor, Diana Florence won groundbreaking convictions, fighting against corruption, domestic violence, wage theft, and deadly working conditions. She's always been a partner to unions, community groups, and to cops like us. For Manhattan District Attorney, vote for Diana Florence. You can visit www.diana4da.com. This is paid for by Diana Florence for Manhattan DA.
This is Cop Talk. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here, my co-host, the great Captain, and this episode is brought to you by Diana Florence for Manhattan DA. Captain, welcome.
Welcome, YouTube viewers and podcast listeners. We have a most interesting guest with a most interesting career.
Don't forget to vote for independent Diana Florence for Manhattan DA. She'll prosecute crime and protect our families, not criminals. Vote Diana Florence for DA for the safer Manhattan line. Today's guest is Charlie Ferrante. Charlie is a former New York City correction officer, now living in Florida, enjoying the life down there with all our former New Yorkers and maybe soon many more to come. And Charlie is also a former chief deputy for Lee County in Florida. Charlie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Charlie, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background? I mean, you're originally from New York, now you're in Florida, and very interesting story, so go right ahead.
Basically, I was raised out in Long Island, Valley Stream. My dad was on the job with correction, and then my brother became on the job with correction. So I wanted to get into the public service. When I was too young to get on the job, I started in like a volunteer fire department, Valley Stream, in a rescue unit. And I got my feet wet and helping people and stuff like that. And then my dad said, you're going to take the city jobs. I mean, because you want, back then it was all about pension. It was all about benefits. It was all about security. And I wound up taking the correction test. I passed that. And I did almost a little bit over 2 years between half on a little bit on Rikers Island, the rest in Queens House Detention. I passed the NYPD test, and I was getting called for the next class. But a job opened up down here in over in Lee County, Florida, the sheriff's office, and my mom and my dad moved down. My wife's mom and dad moved down, and I had an aunt and uncle down here. We came down a couple times. I loved it. But I got to be honest with you, one of the deciding factors was when I was in correction, back then, I felt like the job was changing. It just, I don't know, I saw things that I just said, let me see what Florida's all about.
Right.
And I went down to Florida, and I'll never forget, I took the job. The academies were kind of like about a month apart. I started the job here, and I didn't have to go through the whole academy because they took some of my certification. But my first day on the job, I left the New York City job probably, it was almost 19,000 back then, maybe a little bit lower. I took the job here for 13,000. And my first day on the job, training officer is an old crusty, mullet fisherman on the side. He told me, boy, you're Italian and you're a non-white and you're from New York. You ain't going nowhere. And I said, what did I just get myself into? I left everything. He told me I was a non-white. I was going nowhere. And I was one of the few guys down here that had a heavy New York accent. I mean, my family's from the Bronx. I had a Bronx accent.
And what year was that, Charlie?
I started down here in 89.
89, okay.
89. And I will tell you, Lee County, it was an eye-opener because when you leave New York City and then you come down to an environment like this, it was amazing some of the things you've seen that went on back even in 89. What cops, I mean, what the job was here. I mean, it was really, it was an eye opener. And then trying to intermingle with people that were born and raised down here, it was a challenge. Right. But I mean, you navigate around it, you get through it.
Right.
Did you have to rescue alligators? Capture alligators?
I had alligator calls. I had alligator calls. I had rattlesnake calls. I mean, it was an eye opener. I mean, I remember one time I had a case where I had a kid that was interviewing for a homicide, and I had to take him out by the swamp where he dumped some property. And coming back, he's leg shackled and handcuffed. I'm coming back, and then all of a sudden I just hear this rattle, and it's dark. And I don't know, I'm saying I'm going to get bit. I just grabbed this guy. I just started running because I didn't know. But one of the funniest stories, you got to understand, I'm a kid from New York. I grew up, hanging out on the street with, other guys, that are all cops now. But I think it was like first year I was on the job, I had to go serve a warrant, an arrest warrant for somebody. And I remember it was out in this country because we had a section, it was like a country section. I mainly worked in the inner city. I was assigned out there and I had to go serve a warrant. And I remember I was going to climb over a fence and I was going to sneak up to the back of the house. He had like about 10 acres. I get it over the fence and it's dark, it's pitch black. And all I hear is this something snotting. I turn around, it's a friggin' bull. And I ran like I never ran in my life. And I wound up jumping over the fence, ripped the crotch out of my pants. I mean, I jumped before this thing wound up getting me. And you're not used to that coming from New York. You're not used to shit like that.
No. Rewinding to the alligator. So was it an alligator, and was the perp? Did you grab the perp, or you left him?
It was a rattlesnake in an alligator area. Okay, but I heard the rattle, and that thing could strike twice its distance.
Yeah.
But these are things you're not used to. What did you see in New York? I mean, say maybe a vicious dog.
Right.
You weren't used to this type of stuff, but it was a big change. It really was.
Did you have to carry special like snake shots?
No. I mean, back then they were pretty liberal. If you had to shoot something, you just shot it. When I first started, we were carrying wheel guns. We were carrying the stainless steel 357s. Thing was a cannon.
And what did you carry at corrections? 38. The Smith
30, yeah, there was a 38 Smith & Wesson. My off-duty, believe it or not, which I got cleared. My dad was a captain with correction. He pulled some strings, but I was able to carry the 2.5-inch 357 with 38 rounds in it. That was my first off-duty. But I had a very low. When I first started correction in New York, everybody couldn't. They assigned me my dad's shield number. So my shield number was 810. Everybody looked at me like, where the hell did you get an 810 shield number? But, but from there, the jail here was a little bit different. We were able to do things in the jail here that you would never get away with in New York City. If the block acted up, I can remember them just sending dogs in and tearing up the whole block. Yeah. I mean, we were gladiators. You had to go in and go hand to hand and fight down here. New York City, we still did the riot cart. A little bit different down here. This was hand in hand. You were going in there like gladiators and fighting these guys. Oh. But crazy. I will tell you this much: the experience I had, and I at first I was a little bit upset that I had to do a year and a half or whatever it was in the jail. But the experience you got in that jail, learning everybody in that jail, made you a better cop on the street. When you pulled up, they knew who they could screw with, who they couldn't screw with. But at the same token, you knew who was the mouth and who the one you had to worry about. It was a great education, especially if you're going to work back out in the environment when they're released. it actually helped my career. It really did. I had a lot of good informants. I had a lot of, which helped my career, helped me elevate through the ranks.
Now, back then, was there many New Yorkers going on the job down there, or was it not like today, or?
No, today there's plenty. Back then there wasn't. There was a handful of us. If I met a few other Italian guys on the job, I was happy. There wasn't a whole lot. You were dealing more with people that were born and raised here. Everybody knew each other, and really, for all intents and purposes, it wasn't going to be easy to excel. But I worked as hard as I could, and I did the job for the right reasons, and that I think is very important. If you're a cop or law enforcement, you're doing the job for the right reasons. It shows. Yep. You have guys that are there for a paycheck. We've all seen them. Right. But if you're doing it for the right reasons, it shows. You'll do just fine. And, they have no other choice but to elevate you and excel you through evaluations and everything else. I mean, I had a very good felony arrest records. I arrested a lot of felons. I wasn't big into dope. I did street dope, but I never got into narcotics. But took a lot of dope off the streets. Took a lot of guns off the street. I don't know what. This is a public radio show, so I got to watch my language, right?
It's a podcast, so let it go.
You can say what you want.
I think what my success in my career was, and I don't know if either one of you guys experienced this, but I was what they called as a shit magnet. So I'm the one that would pull up and there'd be an armed robbery in progress. It was just the way it worked for me. A little bit of luck, a little bit of a lot of good police work, but I was pretty. If something happened, I was there. It just the way the cards fell for me. But I did patrol. Back then, it was a African-American neighborhood. I had it all to myself, 5 at night to 3 in the morning. Wow. There was no other backup. My backup was either coming out of Lehigh Acres, which was the country, which was 20 minutes away. And then we had another zone that was mixed Hispanic and African-American. There's a sector next to me. But if he had an arrest, I'm on my own. And I remember one night, I'm rolling around with some guy on the street, the crowd forms, and we're still carrying the wheel guns. And I remember, my backup wasn't going to be there for a while. I remember getting this guy in a headlock. I put the .357 to his head, and I told the crowd, I'm going to shoot him first and shoot as many as you as I can. But staying on that point, I had the respect of the community. Right. One thing I think, especially the kids today on the job, they don't get it. And you guys know it from, being veterans, if you work in certain neighborhoods and they sense weakness, you're done. They would rather you be, fair, firm, and consistent. You know what I'm saying? Yep. And if you because I see some of these kids now, they get out of the car, they treat everybody like shit. Mm-hmm. I found if the way I did the job is the customer is always right. If the guy's acting right, and I don't care if he's been arrested a bunch of times and everything else. If he's acting right, you treat him right. You treat the people in the neighborhood right. But the customer's always right. Back then, if he asked for an ass kicking, you gave him an ass kicking. Mm-hmm. But the community respected you for it because you would think, oh, the cop wound up jacking this guy up. Back then, they would tell the guy he was wrong. This guy was right with you. You mouthed it off. I didn't have problems like that, and I always had the sectors I worked. They were on my side.
Yeah, like you say, back then the community would jump in and kick ass with you. They'd help you out. They would be your partner for the day, for that minute.
It's not like today.
Today, everyone's got the video camera out. Instead of helping, they're just videotaping all the BS.
Without a doubt. Now, I don't believe in anybody abusing anyone. Just because you got a badge doesn't give you the right to abuse people. It really doesn't. There are times you have to use force. It's part of the job. It's a shame. But at the end of the day, it's the way you administer it is how you're going to get the respect on the job.
Right. You remember, you use necessary force, correct? Unfortunately, cops get nervous with that today, and that's why we, unfortunately, it ends bad. We've had so many police officers killed in line of duty. just even with NYPD, just because of the fact that, you know, you got to play by the rules and regs. It's like being in a boxing match, you know, where you can't hit them below the belt, this and that, but they could do whatever they want. And then guess what? The outcome's not good. Captain?
No, it's not. And I've been saying that all along.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the same philosophy applied to Rikers when you were there?
Yes. Rikers Island was, it depended who your boss was. I'll tell you that much. But for most, you treated everybody right. I remember when I was in Queens, I had the kid that shot that Eddie Burns. Oh. We had him in the Queens House detention. I think his name was Copeland, one of the kids. Right. I remember it distinctly. Yeah. But even still, you know, he wasn't. We did not allow him to have any notoriety or treat him like he was some sort of special handling. I mean, he was going to be treated just like everybody else. Probably, maybe a little bit worse if he mouthed it off. But I remember having him in the Queens House detention. But the same thing applied in the jail. You're going to get respect, and you're going to get more out of it, and you command respect from people when you act like that.
True.
You know, and I was a uniform guy. Today they're all wearing beards, turban, all kinds of shit. Me, I was big into uniform. I was big into, you know, being polished, because I think that carries it a long way. And then as I went up the ranks, and even as chief, I demanded nothing less. I wanted the guys to look sharp, because it makes a difference in the public eye. You know, it really does.
It certainly does.
Charlie, when you were on corrections, do you remember what the force was? How many members? New York City Corrections at the time?
The New York City Corrections?
When you were on in 87.
You know, it's a long time ago. I would say maybe, what was it, maybe 10,000, maybe?
Okay. Right.
Yeah, because you had what? You had not only the 5 facilities, you had 5 boroughs. You also had the barges. I mean, and then you had your courts. You had a lot. It was a lot of people.
And then you went down to Florida, and how many members of service on the Lee County Sheriff's Department?
Lee County was, with certified, it was over 1,200 certified. Now, I was the chief deputy, so I was over correction and law enforcement. I had the whole agency. And I was the only chief deputy that ever had correction experience. So I was able to balance both, and I knew both sides of the job. But when I when I was the chief, which people looked at me like I was nuts, but I worked almost every Friday night, and I was out on patrol with the guys, because my theory was, I did the job, you know, I was on the road maybe 15 years prior, but these guys are walking in different shoes, and unless you're out there with them and see what shoes they're walking in, you really shouldn't be Monday morning quarterbacking them. So at least you know exactly what's changed, and you're able to give them the resources they need based on those changes, not based on what you remember back when.
Right.
And I felt that was a good way to be a boss. You know, the other thing I found of being a boss, or being the chief deputy, is don't micromanage these people. Let them do their job. When you micromanage, you're going to shut people down. And that's the biggest mistake I've seen over my career, was supervisors constantly micromanaging. You're shutting your people down. They're being paid. They know the job they have to do. They screw up, they take the ass chewing, and they move on. Because we all screw up. I screwed up. All of you screwed up. Everybody's been in IA. I don't know anybody who has. If you were in an IA, you didn't do your job. Everybody had to go to IA at one point. But at the end of the day, if you give them the resources, give them the room, give them the the backing, you're going to have a great outcome all the time. And that's why I think I was pretty well respected by my people for that reason. Let them do the job.
For the purposes of explanation to those listeners and viewers who don't know what IA means, he means the internal affairs. Am I correct?
Internal affairs. Everybody, if you're doing your job, everybody's going to wind up in internal affairs. It is what it is.
Now, your position, you were the under sheriff or the chief deputy. Was it elected like the sheriff, or you were appointed?
No, I was appointed by the elected sheriff. So my job, in other words, when the new sheriff came in, he looked at people that he thought he wanted as his number 2, and he chose me to be his number two, based on because he was working at the agency, so he knew me for years, and he's seen a lot of the big cases I had, how I carried myself, and the amount of respect I had from the people, that I work with, whether I was a supervisor or a equal to them.
So how many sheriffs did you work on them?
One. I worked under one. He was a 2-term sheriff. I worked as a chief deputy. I worked under three different sheriffs in my career.
So you bounced around from one to the other.
Yeah, and the only thing I will say, and I had a great career. I mean, I started from, and I'll go through it with you. I mean, I started from, being in the bag, pushing a patrol unit, all the way up to chief deputy. I did a lot in between. But I was never, the only thing I didn't like about sheriff's offices was every election year, it was a horror. It really was. Because, you have to understand, you're working for an elected official. And they want to make sure that, they either, sometimes some sheriffs used to ask for donations, which drove me up a wall, because I was always of the opinion that if you're out there doing a good job, that's getting his name out there better than putting money in his campaign account.
So
I was going
to ask you. So you mean the lower level ranks were not permanent? They had no civil service protection?
No, everybody in that agency is appointed by the sheriff. So when he comes in office, everybody's sworn back in. Now, there's been some controversy in case law on and everything else, but there have been sheriffs, and they were allowed to do it years ago, that when they took office, if they were a Republican, they could. All they did, and they weren't firing; they were just not reappointing them. Sheriff has a lot of power. He's the most powerful, probably one of the most powerful people in the county. They have a lot of power, sheriffs.
Charlie, let's touch on PTSD. You like to talk about it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's everybody. Most cops, I'd say 99%, have some sort of PTSD. The problem here is when you're working on the job, it's a taboo. You can't talk about it. All right. You're in warrior mode. You're doing whatever you have to do to get by and everything else, but you're never going to go to the other guys and say, hey, look, I think I got a bout of PTSD, because some guys are going to have a worry if what your performance is going to be and everything else. But even though they're suffering with it, all my friends that are retired, they'll all admit they have some sort of PTSD. Mine was a little bit worse. And back in 91, both my father and brother were on the job in correction. December of 91, they were both murdered the same day by my sister's boyfriend. So I was already on the job working law enforcement when it happened. But what it basically caused was more issues for me as I retired. When you're working, you're in your they call it the warrior mode, the bulletproof mind. It's survival. You get through it. But I don't know what it's like for you gentlemen, but a lot of guys are retired. It seems like when they retire, that's when they start getting haunted, because your Kevlar's down. You're out of that warrior mode. You got to look at it this way. And people don't understand it, and they don't realize what cops go through, what law enforcement goes through. I give everything there is to anybody that served in the military, went overseas, and was in a conflict overseas. But the difference with that is you're in that mode, let's say, for 18 months to a year or 2 years. And you're conditioned to be in that constant combat mode. Law enforcement is the only career where you could deliver a baby in the morning and take a life at night. It's the only career where you could go from nothing happening to all shit breaking loose. You're serving what let's call a so-called civilized society. And you guys have been there. You're witnessing things that the human mind isn't really designed to witness. It's horrible. It really is. I challenge you to show me any cop that's not a retired cop or current cop that's not hyper vigilant that every time they go to a restaurant, they're going to wait until they get their back to a wall because they are not going to sit with their back to the door.
True.
And I'll be honest with you, if I get stuck at a table with some of the guys I hang out with that are on the job, the only way I'll sit my back to the door if one of them is packing. And I trust them because clutch traits, I saw some of my friends shoot. I mean, I'll argue which seat I'm going to sit in, but we're all in that. But look, I'll give you something else. Right now, and from a cop's point of view, and any of your listeners that are on the job will realize this. You call your daughter and she doesn't answer the phone. The normal guy across the street that, maybe worked for a school or something else, in his mind, she's busy, she's got a phone turned down, this and that. In a cop's mind, she's strangled, her underwear's down around the legs. This is what goes through your head because this is what you've been exposed to. It does hurt the family to a degree. I am blessed beyond I could imagine to have the wife that I have. She put up with so much with me over the years on the job. Now, half my friends are all on their second or third marriages. Right. She's been with me for almost 40 years. And if you had to pick a wife for the job, she was the one you would pick. She knew when to break balls and she knew when not to break balls. She knew, like, when I came home, if I was having a rough day, she knew, leave it alone, leave him alone, let him go, let him get over it. She never pressed me, but she was there if I needed her. But it did make an effect. My kids sometimes felt like, I was a little bit too overbearing with them, but it's what you were exposed to. You were protecting them. And you guys all went through it too. I mean, your kids all think that you're over exaggerating. No, not with what you've been exposed to, especially when I was in homicide. I've seen some of the most grotesque things in homicide, but again, I put all my efforts into public service. That one case, I had one case when I was over fugitives. I was a lieutenant, which I think you guys are aware of, that the guy murdered his wife back in 1979. Yeah,
tell us about that case.
They gave me the case. I was the fugitive lieutenant at the time, fugitive sergeant, detective sergeant, and the case was assigned to me. And that case went dead. They worked it for years, and it went back on the shelf and everything else. I took it off, and for 1 year, I just was consumed with the case. I carried the guy's picture in my pocket, even though he was gone 20 years. They said that he, so basically they had a lifestyle type arrangement, but I guess he got upset over it when he came home and she was, I think she was in bed with two guys at the same time. They left. He wound up packing her up with a meat cleaver, and he weighted her down in Sanibel. And, as you know, as it gets hotter, the body's going to come up. He only used 14 pounds of weight. He probably should have used more. She wound up floating up. They identified her off her ring. He never took the ring off. But after that, he was gone. He was missing. Nobody ever knew anything about him. His family claimed he got killed on Mount St. Helen when it erupted. And that's where the case sat. And they gave it to me, but I didn't buy it. So I started doing mail covers. I don't want to give all the secrets because there's certain stuff that fugitive guys are still doing. But basically, at the end of the day, what wound up happening was I called the medical examiner. There was no record to even identify anybody close to him. So I knew he was still alive. So I just started watching the family constantly. The father died in Bay Pines Hospital, which is a military hospital. And I got wind of it. I went to the funeral, thought he was going to show up. Nothing. And that case was supposed to go to America's Most Wanted. So I had his picture age enhanced by an artist in Miami of what he would look like today. The father died, and when you're working fugitives, back then the payphones, they were either a smartphone or not. Luckily, there was a smartphone in the waiting room right outside his room where he died. 10 minutes later, he died at I think it was 10-something at night, almost 11 o'clock. 10 minutes later, a phone call goes from that waiting room up to a marina in upstate New York, in Albany, in Glen Falls, New York. And so that's kind of weird. So I took his age-enhanced photo, and I faxed it to the detective unit up in a sergeant detective up in Glen Falls by Albany. And I said, I'm going to send you a picture, and I want you to tell me if you know who this guy is. So the fax comes through. I'm on the phone, and he says, oh, yeah, that's George Wilson. He works on our boats. I said, don't say a friggin' thing to him. Don't do anything. I'm jumping a flight. I'm coming up there. So I get up there. I fly up there, and like an idiot, I went with a thin leather jacket, and it was 20 below, but that's a whole nother story. I was dying up there. But yeah, I remember it snowing, and we called him and said that the marina was robbed. It was broken into. You need to come here right away. And he winds up showing up, and he went by the name of George Wilson. And I remember he pulled up, and I put my hand on his shoulder, and I said, Alan Rhodes, you're under arrest for the 1979 homicide of Shirley Pond Rhodes. The guy turned white like he was going to faint. We got him in the car, and he said, no, I haven't been called that name in over 20 years. And he thanked me. He was tired of being somebody else. Wow. And I got a full confession on that. And that was, at that time, that case was the longest standing fugitive case at the time. And it was supposed to go to America's Most Wanted in the week after or 2 weeks after, and I wound up locking him up before then. And then brought him back here. And I think he only did 8 years because back then Florida had a lot of game time. But yeah, I mean, that was a
good detective work. Good case. Good case.
I had another work, yeah. I had another one that you guys assisted with. Your tarot unit assisted me with. We had parents that murdered their 18-month-old child. The child was found in a partially a grave. Her hand was just sticking on. Animals got at it, but she was decomped. The same people that did the forensic sketch was able to do a clay impression of what she would look like before she decomped. Put it out on the news. We got a hit. Now it was an election year, and I think it was right after the Alan Rhodes case. The sheriff was running for election, and he asked me, I need a favor. I need this case done. And me being cocky, I said, well, how fast do you want him? Stupid move. But anyway, I wound up in one day, I flew from here to your tarot unit over in, Fort, where is it?
Fort Totten?
Yeah, Fort Totten. Yeah. We were able to do some pager dumps, this and that. We went over, we interviewed the one of the perpetrator's brothers. The same night, I jumped the flight to Seattle, New York, and me and another guy got him in a boarding house in Seattle, New York. 24 hours. And all off of legwork, forensic work, and all that.
Detective work.
Yeah.
That's what we do, right? Good job on that one as well. So you're originally from New York. Okay, you know we have a mayor's race going on here. I think it's world news today because of who's running and where we're at. You have that guy Mandami, you have Cuomo, and you have Curtis Sliwa. Any thoughts on the mayor's race? I know you can't vote, but I know you probably love to vote just to get the right guy in. So what's your opinion on the mayor's race coming up in New York City?
If the Mandami guy gets in, New York is in a lot of trouble. Here's the way I think of it. And I've been out in New York for a while, but I do follow politics to a degree. The problem here is Adams did the best he could, I thought. I mean, I think he was pretty much for the guys and everything else. But the guy you had before then already started turning the ship around in the wrong direction. Adams couldn't turn it. He could just keep it stable. This guy gets in, that ship's going to turn to the point that I don't think it could be turned back around again. And where my heart breaks is for the guys currently on the job, because they got 15 years on the job. Where are they going? They're screwed. Right. And you're going to get a lot of guys. I hate to say it. I hope God is good to them, and I pray for them. I think you're going to have more cops getting hurt.
True.
They're going to be so afraid to pull their gun, so afraid to do their job. It will be a major travesty for the city of New York.
Absolutely.
It could be like the movie Escape from New York.
But really, all kidding around the side, you're not far from that right now with some of the things going on. I would put Sliwa in a heartbeat. He's a conservative. He's been out on the street. None of these guys have been out on the street. This kid has been a spoon-fed rich kid. Right. Sliwa rode subways. He's been out on the street. He's been in the thick of it.
Yeah. Nationally,
that's the guy you want.
Right. Absolutely. And the captain and myself agree. Cop Talk agrees, and most of our, if not all of our listeners agree as well. We're pro Curtis Sliwa for mayor for sure.
And we've had him on the show 4 times.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have him on for
So
a fifth.
all your relatives still left in the city of New York, up in the Bronx, tell them to vote for Curtis Lewa.
Oh, they're Valley Stream and everybody else. I do have one small section of liberal relatives. They're coming around.
Yeah, I'm sure they
And
will.
I'm not, like I said, I mean, but, I feel bad for the guys in New York. I think they're going to leave that job in droves, and now you're going to have to lower your standards to even get somebody to patrol.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's a problem.
So, as I was talking to you before we started taping, so start buying some property down in Florida, because
without a doubt.
you're probably going to do well if Mandami wins, because everyone's going to go to Florida and be purchasing property and hopefully buy from you.
We're blessed with a great governor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You guys see DeSantis all the time.
Yeah.
He is a great governor. He's pro-cop. He's pro residents. Yep. We're in good shape down here.
Absolutely. Captain?
I guess you'll have to start moving the alligators and the snakes out to make room for the New Yorkers that buy property.
Well, we got problems with black bears too now, but yeah, you know what? There's plenty of property. We're seeing more New Yorkers on this coast. They used to all go to the East Coast. We're seeing more on the West Coast. The secret's out. But I mean, when you think of it, if you guys retire, get out when you can.
How's the Panthers down there?
The Panthers are all south. The Panthers and the Bears seem to be south.
I didn't realize there was Florida Panthers, the hockey team, but I was interested. I didn't realize there was many Panthers actually in South Florida.
There's a lot more wildlife than you think. The other day I saw an eagle grab a rabbit and eat it on my neighbor's roof. I mean, we got wildlife all over this place, but it's a great place to be. Retired, working down here lately because of the governor and the sheriffs. It's a great place to work. I mean, but if you have the time, and you were able to leave it, but like I said, some of these guys that have to wait for that retirement from the city of New York. The only thing that I will say is horrible down here, and I see it with my buddies, GHI sucks down here. And I don't understand it, because we have all these cops, firemen, sanitation guys living down here, but nobody's out here pushing GHI to these doctors. Wow. And I remember when my dad first retired down here, GHI, we only had a few doctors that took it. Somebody's got to come down here to, I don't know if it's a union, whoever handles it, and send them down to Florida and start getting these doctors to take the GHI.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think it's now Emblem.
Is it Emblem now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they got to do something, because you guys are all down here. A lot of you are down here, and it's not fair. These, because I see some of my friends are driving 2 counties over to see a cardiologist. It's stupid.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, that's got to change.
Aren't they covered by Medicare?
If they're old enough. A lot of my guys, they're under 62, so they're not covered.
Right.
The guys that have Medicare, they're in great shape. But
speaking of Medicare, Kevin, did you take care of yours?
I'm all good. Charlie, it was a pleasure. Thank you for spending some time with us. Charlie Ferrante, correct?
Yeah. Good gentlemen. It was my pleasure.
And Captain, in closing?
In closing, I think you'll have a very interesting career, and carry that snake shot. I heard that some of the cops carry that.
We used to carry it in the 357. We had them in the car when we needed it. We just get a shotgun out of the trunk back then. You can't do that now.
Oh, okay.
So Charlie, hopefully we'll see you soon down in Florida. Tell my buddy Ray Marino down there, I can't wait to have a cigar and a cocktail with you guys soon.
Let us know. You're welcome anytime. And God bless the both of you, and thank you for serving.
Thank you. Okay, be safe, Charlie. Charlie Ferrante, our guest today from Florida. At this time, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to another episode of Cop Talk. If you like what you hear, you can follow us on social media at Cop Talk WABC, at Cop Talk WABC, and Captain.
And it will also be on YouTube.
Until next time, God bless you, God bless America, God bless law enforcement throughout the world, and also God bless our U.S. military. Thank you.
Amen.
This is Cop Talk.